Happy Women's Day, Catherine and everybody here. So today we are going to present number 4, soft skills and hard skills. We have Tim, who is a manager at Cervello, and Catherine, who is vice president at Bright Horizons. Just feel free to ask your questions on the chat, and we still have more CDP sessions planned. Hope you will enjoy. And as many questions as we have, we can have more information. Yeah, it's up to you. I mean, the stage is yours, Tim.
Okay, fantastic. We'll get started.
It's a surprise for you. Yeah.
No, fantastic. Can you see my screen? Does everyone got the deck slide?
Yes, Tim, we can.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so we'll get started to talk about transferable skills. So we're gonna, in our agenda today, we're gonna cover one of those hard skills, talking about digital strategy, the R framework. And then we're going to go into a consumer exploratory, taking a look at how those are, at play in different brands, how they're using that. And then to dig into the Marketing Cloud platform, we're going to take a look at 2 use cases, one looking at ways to segment and alter your contact strategy using SQL. And then also for the right message, we're going to look to do some personalization in Marketing Cloud as well, using data feeds and AmScript. And we'll wrap that up at the end with some questions and answer after Catherine's session as well. So talking about the digital strategy, this is a framework that I think some of us may be familiar when you're thinking about digital marketing. We're not doing big brand advertising like Super Bowl ads or sporting event ads. These are targeted, specific advertising. So you might have heard this concept of delivering the right message to the right person at the right time. And further and add a couple of other rights to this framework to think about not only the right person, the right message, thinking about the right offer. So what's the person who might be interested to engage with your brand, to buy? Sometimes an offer can be very powerful. And then also in this day and age, you want to consider the right channel. So you can't just focus on one channel these days. You got to look at all the different channels. Where is your consumer engaging, whether that's email, whether it's retail, whether it's mobile? Those are the things you want to think about. And then we also like the way this is reordered. So you can sort of see the message is all the way over on the right. We feel like that's the least important. That's oftentimes the area where most people focus on. They want to make sure that email looks really great or the homepage. But really, it's the right person that's the most important, because if you have that right person completely targeted, it doesn't really matter what the message would be. But if you're creating a message and you're sending it to the wrong person, then it'll probably fall flat. So to give you an example, in my background, I worked for a gourmet food startup for many years. And the way we looked at our target audience, we had back then in the early 2000s, there weren't a lot of online buyers or direct buyers. But anyways, we were targeting those online buyers. And so we knew of the overall buying audience, those people who bought online or bought direct were a very small group. And then if you took within that very small group, those who were interested and willing to buy food direct, that's a very, very specific audience that we targeted. And so our focus was always about that right person, because we knew if we targeted that right person, it didn't really matter so much about what we presented them. But we did know, and we did experience, that if we send our advertising to somebody who wasn't a food buyer, somebody who wasn't an online shopper, it fell flat and there was no response. So always like to prioritize the right person first. So we wanted to, one of the earlier sessions, one of the colleagues mentioned about doing a consumer exploratory when you're exploring digital marketing or exploring Marketing Cloud. And we think this is such a great idea. And I definitely want to, take that and consider doing that, not only as a consumer, but also as a student, and watch and see how the brands are interacting with you at every step of the way. So we have some examples on how this plays out today. We want to look at 3 different areas of the consumer life cycle: the pre-visit, before they actually engage with your brand; that initial visit when they first interact with the brand, and then third, how they engage with the brand. So why is this important? So when you're looking at that overall digital strategy framework, when you're working on your email or your landing page or your specific project, it's good to know how this all sits into the overall framework. Doing a little bit of homework and being a student of the digital strategy, you can sort of understand what your competitors are doing. Their playbook is basically open for you to experience as a consumer. And also, when you're looking for that next job, if you do this research, you can go to that interview with some questions because you'll know about what they're doing from a digital standpoint. So to give you an example, let's take a look at the pre-visit. So here in this example, when you're looking, this is, before they even engage with your brand, say they're coming different channels to enter in your brand, which is Google or search engine marketing. So there's a variety of different ways that someone can engage or to come into your brand. So if they search, say they're looking for backpacks into Google, they'll come up with either those product listing ads that are over here, or if they're interested in a specific product, the product listing ads are over here. These are just the text ads. They can find a specific product to click through and come right into your site from that standpoint. And then also, as it sort of gets watered down a little bit more, if they're searching for your brand, they can either come through a paid ad or something through your natural search as well. They can indicate whether they're interested in a specific product based on your text ad, and then also find more about your company just before they even enter your website. So why does this matter? So even before somebody visits your website or engages with your brand, you could basically form 3 different types of personas of who this person could be. So we sort of map this out into 3 different personas. One person who's ready to purchase, a second persona who might be evaluating options, and then the third persona is someone who's just shopping. So let's take a look at this ready to purchase person. So this person might have responded to that product listing ad. They picked on a specific item that they're interested in your brand, and they also responded to this offer. It was on sale. It offered free shipping. So you know that they're engaging with promotions. You know that they have a specific interest in outdoor products. So their intent, they're ready to order now. So that's one persona. A second persona might be somebody who didn't choose a product listing ad, a specific product, but they might be looking at a specific category. You might know what products they might be interested in. They might be sort of like a medium intent. They'll be shopping around. They're not sure which product that they want to order. And then the last one is just shopping. Someone who might come through your natural search. They might be interested in your brand. Their intent's probably low. And for all of these, you'll know the channel from Google. So you can see for all these examples, you know the person, this is the right person. You know something about the offer. You know this is the right time, the different gauge, you can either high, medium, or low timing. And then you also know the channel. But what's not here is the message itself. Often the message in Google is just text ads. So it sort of impresses the importance of how the message isn't really important. They've really not even engaged with your brand. But before they even enter on your site, you can break them down to 3 different personas. And hopefully in your marketing, you're treating them differently in that. So let's take a look at the next phase, which is the initial visit. So in this example, we've got somebody, where they've engaged with the brand. They're on your website. These are the things you want to start looking out of how marketers are capturing that all-important data point, which is your email address. You want to get that email address. This is when Marketing Cloud really kicks in. Once you have that communication stream, you can reach out to them. So things that you want to look out for on that website, is there a pop-up that asks for your email address? Do they give you an offer, a % off if you sign up for your email address? Are they trying to drive you into their site with different promotions to stay on the site a little bit longer, to maybe put an item into their cart? Also look for where that email address beyond the pop-up is also being captured on the website, because again, that's the gateway to the email side of Marketing Cloud. You can even look to see how brands are engaging with you, even if you don't capture their email address. So for example, I visited the LL Bean site. I didn't provide my email address, but a couple minutes later in my Google account, I got what looked like an email sent from LL Bean trying to reach out to me, even though they didn't have their email address. So what are those different tactics to try to get that capturing of that email? And then the last area of that consumer journey is the engagement, right? The all-important part. When they've engaged with your brand, all we need is that email address, and hopefully maybe they've chosen an item and they've put it into the cart. And this is where those, from the e-commerce standpoint, those classic communication streams, the welcome email and the abandoned cart email, I just want to call it a couple of different areas to think about when you're thinking about those communications. Number one, the offer. Was there an offer to sign up for emails? Was it carried through in the email itself? Is there an offer to complete that cart? Timing is extremely important for that welcome email. You should be getting those welcome emails immediately. If it's abandoned cart, it might be within a couple of hours. It might be the next day. The timing is always good to watch and monitor, see how the competition's doing that. And then also recommended products. Are they not only serving the product that you carted, but also those recommended products based on your persona? So why does this matter? Again, you can take this information, this little information that you're pulling from these consumers, and you can start creating these personas, these different target groups to target your marketing. So in this example, after going through those 3 different phases, you could break your consumer personas down into 3 different groups. Like there's an abandoned cart deluxe person, someone who came in, they signed up for their email, they abandoned a cart, they clicked on that abandoned cart email, they might even called customer service, and they came into that product listing ad. So you know that they're high intent, they're ready to order. So you want to send them the deluxe version of your marketing plan. You want to send them as many abandoned cart emails. You want to make sure it's a welcome series filled with all of those products that they might be interested in, and tailor that campaign sends according to their interest level. And another persona could be someone who's a little bit more, maybe a little bit medium intent, someone who might have had an abandoned cart, but maybe they came through a branded SEO ad. They're maybe not, ready to order right yet. They're still shopping. You still want to serve them up a lot of, those targeted communications, but maybe a little bit more generic. And then for someone who just signs up through the email sign up to the regular communication stream. So it sort of gives you an idea of how you can use just a little bit of research to understand what these different personas are and how those right person, the right offer, the right message can play out in your digital marketing strategy. So let's take a look at an exercise right in the Marketing Cloud platform and how we can take and execute that right person, or what we're going to be looking at segmenting into those different personas. So whenever you're thinking about segmentation on the digital side, you want to think about the RFM model. So recency, frequency, and monetary in that order. So recency is always the most important area to look at, because it's sort of known that the person who's bought from you, say within the last 3 months, is more apt to buy from you than, say, someone who hasn't bought from you in a year or two. No matter how much they spend, it's all about the recency. I mean, email service providers even use recency to recommend that you only send emails to those people who may have clicked within the last 12 months. So always think about, when you're thinking about segmentation, recency is first. So here's an example of how you could break down your customer audience into these different segments. So let's say like your A segment, your primary segment is someone who bought within the last 3 months, obviously looking at that recency. Then comes frequency. So maybe they've bought 2 times, and then the spend doesn't really matter so much, just as long as they're a recent buyer. Your B segment could be someone who's, bought within the last 6 months, and maybe they have a higher purchase amount total as you look back in recency. And then your C segment could be someone who's bought within the last 12 months. We want to have a little bit more of a bump up in frequency, and also a little bit higher total purchase amount as well. You may also, in your segmentation, have a segment where you're trying to bring them over into the channel, to the email channel, someone who may never have clicked on an email. So you're going to want to have a more tight, recent segmentation of that, someone who's bought within the last 6 months. Hopefully you can bring them over into the email channel. So to deliver this segmentation, we want to take a look at how this might impact on the contact strategy itself. So here's an example of a contact strategy for, in the US, we have what's a Black Friday and Cyber Monday time period during the holiday season, which is a primary email time of send for those who are in the holiday business. So if you take a look at that time frame, you can sort of see how that different segmentation strategy could play out. So if you have an AM send and a PM send, you're going to want to send that A segment all of those emails. But for segments B, C, and D, you want to sort of scatter them around to the primary sends, not to send all of them. So it's sort of an example of how you can use that segmentation and how that could lay out in a contact strategy itself. And then let's take a look at how we can build this right into the Marketing Cloud, how we can use SQL to create these different segments so that can tailor your contact strategy based on that RFN model. So with any SQL build, you want to take a look at the three different areas that make up a SQL build. There's the select statement, the from statement, and the where statement, or the where clause. The select statement is just those fields that you want to output to your data extension or your list are going to be used for their email send. The from statement are those databases where you're pulling the data, that customer information. So for our use case, we're going to use this universal data extension, which is basically our database of all of our customer information. And then we're going to combine this with a data view that will give us the click data from the Marketing Cloud environment. So those two combined are going to give us our database of where we're going to be pulling these subscribers from. And then the last part is the where clause, where we're going to use to filter based on those segments. So alter the purchase date, the number of purchases, and that click date to build that within the Marketing Cloud environment. So I'm going to try to switch tabs, and hopefully this comes through when I'm doing the sharing. Can you see, am I showing Marketing Cloud, or do I probably need to reshare this tab?
Yeah, we are still seeing the slide.
Okay, thank you. So let me go back and I will share my screen for this query. Okay, fantastic. So here we are in Marketing Cloud. Am I showing the query?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So here's that query in Marketing Cloud. And again, here are those three sections: the select statement, the from statement, and the where clause. So in this select statement, these are the fields that we're going to want to output that include the fields that we're going to look to send the email and also populate the personalization. So in this, the field that are in from this from statement, we've got the subscriber key, we've got the email address, we've got the name, we've got the line, which is that's the category that the person is interested in. Those are all coming from this data extension, this universal file data extension. So let me just share with you that data extension. Sorry, I have to go back and forth on this, but let me go into that data extension. And this is the data extension that has all of that customer information. So here's that subscriber key, here's that email address, here's the purchase and the purchase date, here's the name, here's the line, the different categories that they're looking to shop for, all of that great information that's here that we're going to be using in our from statement, all of our customer information. So while we're in this tab, I also want to call out this data view as well. The Marketing Cloud data views, there's a variety of different data views that Marketing Cloud gives availability to you to pull in this information. And so this data extension is based off an automation that's pulling all that data view information that you can query and creating a data extension that you can tell by the subscriber key when they've engaged most recently with your brand. So these two data stores are what we're going to be using to use in our from statement for the query itself. So let me just go back to that query and we'll just finish out what that is looking like. Okay, so there's those two data extensions, that universal file, which is our customer database. There's that data view data extension as well. And so we're looking to join these two files based on the fact that they both have this field called a subscriber key, which is that unique sendable ID, both in the universal file and the click data view. We're matching that on that so that we should be able to create a database of all of those customers and also their engagement data. And then the last part is the where clause. This is where we're going to do the filtering. So for this segment, we're just looking to pull in, this is our entire set, all of our segments. We're looking to pull in people that have purchased at least once and that they've clicked within the last 12 months. So if we go back to the query, let's pull up the A segment query. We'll see the difference of how this can be varied upon based on the where clause. So again, there's nothing different between the A segment and the full segment on the select and the from statement. But here's where the where clause changes. We want the purchases to be greater than or equal to 2, not just 1. And then we want that last purchase date here to be within the last 3 months. So that's going to create our A segment there. So if we go into the date extension itself, let me just go into that real quick. And we can see for the full date extension, we've got 23 records. If we go into the A segment, we can see that we've got only 6 records because we're seeing that these are the people that have clicked, they've purchased within the last 3 months and they've clicked within the last year. So that's how you can create those different segments in your using a SQL query. But I also want to do something a little bit more with that query. So let me just share my screen back into the Query Studio. So let me share this screen. And I'm going to go back and copy this query from the A query. And we're going to drop this into Query Studio. So we don't want to stop there. We want to add some more filtering this to see if we can get this a little bit more refined. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to pull in to see if these people have actually abandoned a cart. So we're going to add this filter to the where clause to pull in if they have abandoned the cart. So if they, in the record, if they've abandoned a cart, it should come through, that field should come through as yes. And then we also want, there's also a source field in that data extension that we can determine which way they came through on the Google ads. So if we use this in statement, we can choose those people that came through that product listing ad, which is PLA, or if they came through the PPC, which is the paid text ad as well. And then let's also change this, just to open this up a little bit, to the last 6 months. So now we're going to change this segment in Query Builder to pull in people that not only have purchased within the last 6 months, but they've actually had an abandoned cart, and then they came through the Google, the different sources through Google. So then let me just add this source in here in the select statement so we can just see that come through as well. While that's running, I just wanted to give you a quick intro to Query Studio, a fantastic program to add whenever you're doing work within Marketing Cloud. It's free, it's in the App Exchange, and it allows you to do exactly what I'm showing here. You can take a query, you don't have to create a data extension, but it allows you to query your data and pull up different data values right here instantly so that you can see the difference between your data set before you commit to building the actual query itself. So if we take a look at what we're seeing here, we're now pulling in those people who actually abandoned a cart. We can actually see the SKU that they abandoned with. We can see the source. We're seeing that all of those abandoned carts came through that product listing ad. Again, they had selected a specific product, probably related to a specific promotion. And so this is a further way that you can refine your segment, get down to those people, and tailor your communication, not just to the general audience, but again, you're tailoring it to those people who've bought within a specific time, and then even channel even further to those people who abandoned the cart. Get really granular to that right person. So let me stop sharing. We'll go back into the deck and pick up from where we are left off on the deck. I'm going to switch over to the next use case. And we'll share the deck. It has all queries in place for you to refer to. All right, the next exercise is to take a look at how we can tailor the right message, how we can use AmpScript to give a level of personalization in 4 different ways. So the 4 ways we're going to look at it today. 1, to take a look at the greeting and how we can render a personalized greeting, how we can render the content based on the category that they're interested in, how we can do it based on their intent, whether they abandon a cart or not, and then also by those personas that we've been talking about. So within Marketing Cloud, we're going to take a look at the functions that are related to those use cases. For the personalized greeting, we're going to use the attribute value function, the V function, and the %% function. For the intent-driven use case, we're going to use an if-then statement. And for the persona, we're going to use the lookup function and the if-then function. So let me stop sharing. We'll go right into Marketing Cloud, and we'll go into this email. So let's take a look at this email that we've got set up here. Let me click into this email, and we'll do a preview and test just so that we can see what this email is doing. So this email is like an email that someone's receiving as part of their, maybe a campaign send. We want to send a special sale email on outdoor or apparel. We want to personalize the variable based on the intent, whether they abandon the cart or not, and also serve up items that are relevant to the subscriber based on their engagement. So let's start first with the greeting. How can we personalize the greeting? So in the data extension that we're sending in, as you might have seen, we have a field that's called name. And to render it in Marketing Cloud, it's very easy. If you have a data extension, you can just use that %% function and use the name of that field in the data extension to render that field, no matter where in the subject line. It can be in the body of the email. That's one way to do it. And then there's another way you can do it, which is to set a variable to that field in the data extension. So here we are setting a variable of name to the attribute value of that name field in the data extension. So what attribute value does is it will prevent an error just in case there's no field, there's no value in that name field. That's why you want to always just use attribute value. It's just best practices. So to how to render using a variable, here's how you would do that. You'd use this %% equal the V function surrounded with parens, rendering that variable itself. So just a different way of rendering a variable and personalization in Marketing Cloud. So if we hit preview and test, we can see how here's that field, that data extension that we've got set up. Here's that field name, and it should render Lisa. So we're seeing Lisa up here in the subject line that was surrounded by the %. And now we're seeing also down here that same V lookup is doing Lisa as well. So that's how you'd render a greeting, a very basic use case in Marketing Cloud. Okay, our second use case is how to vary content based on the interest of the subscriber. So a quick and easy way to do that right in the UI is to use a dynamic content block. So let me walk you through how to do that. So you just drag this block onto your canvas. You're going to want to select content to be the default message. So for this example, you're going to use the camping image as the default. And now we're going to create a rule using that send data extension to determine how we want to vary this up based on the category that's coming through for each of our subscribers. So if you go select that data extension that we're looking to use to send, we can use, I cannot see that button, so let me just pull that back and hit OK. Thank you. And now we're going to drag this line field over, and then we're going to say if that category or line equals apparel, then we're going to select the content that we want to render if that equals apparel. There we go. And then we're going to hit save. And there we go. That's how you set up a dynamic content block. So if I'm just going to delete this because the one above is set up the exact same way. And if you hit preview and test, and we'll take a look at the different variations within the data extension. So here's that line. It's set for outdoor. You can see that tent is being rendered. If we select a different value or different subscriber in that data extension, you can see that apparel is coming through here. And you can see that image coming through using that dynamic content block. So that's an easy way within Marketing Cloud, use that dynamic content block to render your content based on those values that are coming through in the personalization that you're providing in your data extension. Let's also take a look at a way to do that using variables as well, right in the AMP script. because sometimes those dynamic content blocks won't work for all use cases. So again, you're going to want to, in your header script. So again, I forgot to mention at the top of this email, we've got this script block, which is a code snippet, which has all of your AMP script located in here. That's usually best practice. You don't want to have this scattered out throughout your email. You want to have this all located in one place, so you know where it's all collected, and you sort of like your directory of all your code. So here's an example where we're setting that line variable that's coming through that data extension to a variable here called line. And now that that's set, we can use that to customize our content. So in this example, we want to render great deals on sweaters, hoodies, and leggings if their line is equal to apparel. Otherwise, we're going to want to use, we want to have it render spring outdoor clearance sale. So you just nest a AMP script block right in here where we're asking if that line equals apparel, then render this text. Otherwise, render the default text here. So again, let's do a preview and test and see how that is rendering. So again, here it's rendering as apparel. We're seeing great deals on sweaters, hoodies, and leggings. And then here's, we're seeing it's outdoor. We're seeing spring outdoor clearance sale. So that's how you can render content in two different ways, using dynamic content block and then also using AMP script as well. So on that same vein, let's also take a look at intent. So what we also want to deliver from a messaging standpoint is we want to customize this so that it gives a special message if somebody has abandoned a cart. So luckily we have this data that we're populating in our data extension. So you can see here, this person did not abandon a cart. So we're seeing this generic message, take an extra 10% off. But if we scroll through, here's somebody who abandoned the cart. And here we're seeing the messaging change here. Take an extra 20% off those items that are already in your cart. So let's just take a quick look to see how that is working in the background. Again, we're using AMP script to set that abandoned cart variable based on that data extension field that's coming through. And then again, just like with the line, we're going into this block and we're using an if statement. So if abandoned cart equals yes, then say 20% off those items. Otherwise, use the 10% off. And we saw how that previewed in that use case as well. So that's another example of how to use intent-driven logic to customize your content using text as an example. Okay, the last example is how do we render custom products to the user using AMP script. So let's go back into this content, and we're going to go into further down in our AMP script, and this is where we're setting up a matrix that is going to determine how those products are being rendered in the email itself. So we're using an if-then statement. And we're breaking this out into two groups. We're asking if that line or if that category equals apparel, then we're going to set these two products based on the apparel logic. And then down here is basically the default. If it's not apparel, it's going to be outdoor. We're going to set the products to the outdoor here, but we won't go into that. We're just going to take a look at the apparel use case itself. So not only are we asking if the line equals apparel, but we're also going to check to see if they abandoned the cart. If they abandoned the cart, then we're going to use that first product that's going to be recommended as the actual carted item that they abandoned. And I think if you remember in that data extension, we are capturing that information. So again, we're setting this AC SKU field based on the attribute value of that abandoned cart SKU item in our data extension. So we're just using a nested if statement to ask if someone abandoned a cart, we're going to set it to that abandoned cart item that they actually abandoned. If there is an abandoned cart, we're going to set this this product that's based on an apparel item that we want to move within the inventory. So once that's set, then we're going to look to, we have our SKUs defined. Now we're going to look to do a lookup to the data extension to determine, now that we have the SKU number, we want to populate the name of that product, the price, the image, and the URL of that product. So we've got a data extension created that has all of that product information. So let me just stop sharing really quickly so I can show you that data extension, because I think it's helpful to see, just from a data standpoint, what that looks like. So one of your automations, it would be helpful if you could create a product feed, which would include all of your SKU items. So if you take a look at this data extension, here we've got that SKU, we've got that product name, here's the image that should be rendered for that product, here's the price, and here's the link. So we're going to be using this data extension to populate all those fields in AMP script based on that SKU value that we're setting in the AMP script as well. So let me stop sharing this. We'll go back into that email content and finish that up and how that works. Okay, so the last function that we're going to be talking about today in AMP script is this lookup function. So we've got this SKU that we're looking to look up in this data extension. So when you're creating a lookup, there's 4 fields that you're looking to populate. The first field is the data extension, which has all of that data, that NTO product feed data extension that we just looked at. And then this is the column. We're looking to return the product or the name of the product. And then it's based off of the SKU field, which we've populated here. So that's how you use lookup. It's going to basically set the name, the price, the image, and the URL itself, setting all these variables. And then when you go into the content itself, in the HTML, it's just pulling in it's pulling in the URL for where to send it to. Here's the name of the product, and here's the price. That's all here in the HTML. So when you do a preview and test, let's take a look at how this is rendering. So let's go to an example that someone that doesn't have an abandoned cart. So here we go. Here's somebody who's got the outdoor line. So we want to serve up outdoor products that are related. So you can see these are related to outdoor. They don't have an abandoned cart, so they're just serving up those generic items that we've selected. Let's take a look at another example. So here's someone who had chose outdoor, but they abandoned the cart. Here's that SKU number, and here it's being rendered in the featured and recommended to that subscriber based on their interaction using that if logic in the AMP script itself. So there's an example of how you can use content to tailor your messaging, tailor the products specifically to each of those person, and tie that personalization right down to the content to help create the best messaging as possible. So let me stop sharing. We'll go back into the deck.
Tim, just before you go on,
Sure.
It's been great to sort of do that deep dive into SQL and also Contact Builder. I think it's been very revealing, especially for people that are very new to the platform. I'm also conscious of time. Catherine, how much time would you like, and how much time do you need to do what your part of the presentation well? And should we continue with just in the context of this, because it has been a great deep dive, continue on with Tim and just schedule a follow-up maybe later this week or next week to sort of dive into what you'd like to share? Just a quick question, Catherine. I'm sort of aware that you've been sitting patiently there too, but it's
Sorry.
sort of a bit of we're sort of balancing it a little bit because it is such great content, Tim, and I've really appreciated hearing what you've had to present.
It's no problem. If you'd like to reschedule me for another time, that is certainly possible. This has been really interesting. I'm learning things, which I manage a team that uses these skills all the time. So it's great for me always to see how another org is doing this. Whatever the group's preference is, I'm happy to share some thoughts today or to follow up in another session, because I know that we also want to have time for the group to ask questions and talk about what's here.
Catherine, would it be okay if we rescheduled for next week and we did another one with you for next week and sort of give it the justice that it needs? Because as you say, I think Q&A is going to be really important on what Tim's talked about. And I think
Sure thing.
like I've got yeah, cool. All right, we'll get that organised. And thank you so much for waiting patiently too. Sorry, Tim, I just wanted to just clear that. Yeah.
And I'm sorry,
So
I went over.
You've got the floor.
Yeah,
That's
I'm sorry, I
okay.
went over on time.
No.
Thank you. Okay,
No, that's
great.
okay. I think we've all got a hard finish at 9, so wrapped up before then, or
No
at
problem.
the top of the hour, I should say, depending on what time zone you're in.
You got it. No problem. So yeah, so that wrapped up the use case on tailoring your right message. And I just wanted to leave a couple of tips as you're looking to build up those transferable skills in Marketing Cloud. So don't rush. It takes time to build this up. Whether you're in the Marketing Cloud platform or not, to get experience on these concepts, don't rush it. Also be open to play all different types of roles. So if your role is more of a developer lean and you weren't ready for that, dig into it. I think you'll really enjoy the code. It is light coding in Marketing Cloud for the most part. So I think you'll really enjoy it. And I think everyone can find themselves to be capable as a developer. Definitely think outside of Marketing Cloud to get that digital marketing experience. So like that exercise we walked through, experiencing how different brands are experiencing and how they're doing their digital marketing. You can also get a free MailChimp account or a Constant Contact to experience email marketing outside of Marketing Cloud. In this use case, we did not really focus on the Salesforce CRM environment, but definitely worthwhile getting a strong understanding of that environment. On the B2B side, it is usually the database of record. So definitely recommend getting an admin certification in the Salesforce CRM environment. Definitely leverage those Trailblazer community groups. They're filled with people like myself who are working through these solutions, asking questions, working through stuff. You can ask questions. You can even answer questions. It's a great forum to get that information. And then also always try to give back. It's always good to share your knowledge with the community at large. And then so hopefully that gave you a good framework of that digital strategy, that R framework, and hopefully that consumer explorer gave you a little bit of a feel of that framework, the bigger picture of what all of the things that we're working on from that perspective. And then hopefully looking at that right person gave you some examples of how to really dial your marketing, your digital strategy, and how to execute that using SQL in Marketing Cloud. And then also in that right message, how to use that personalization in different ways using AMP script, those different data feeds and the data extension. And that's it. So it's going to want to open up for questions. If anyone have any questions on either one of those, on the SQL side, on the AMP script side.
Hi, this is Bidisha. I have one question. This is more of a design. I can ask the question for the design, right? In this form. Okay. So for example, I cannot use the email address as a unique ID because it has been shared across for various reasons. Number two is that one company generated ID is also there, which is unique, but it is not available for certain records. Now, in that case, what should be my strategy for determining the unique ID? Neither I can use that company ID, which I can consider as a contact key, as well not the email address. So how I can address this issue if you can.
Well, that's a tough one. Matt, do you have any recommendations on that? I mean, that's a great architecture question. I don't think there's a simple answer to that. And you can't use either one of them. What sounds like what's going to happen is as you use that email address as a subscriber key, that's going to create a subscriber. As you use in another ID associated with that email address, you're going to create another subscriber. You're going to create a lot of different subscribers for every single email address, which can create your contacts and grow them exponentially. So you definitely want to strive to see. And typically, when you're integrating with the Salesforce CRM environment, it's that contact ID or that lead ID, which is that subscriber key. So I don't know, Matt, or Lakshmi or Catherine, any thoughts on architecture in that situation?
Sorry, Tim, my browser crashed as soon as you said that. And I'm just glad the presentation's still running. Can you repeat the question in just a nice, concise way? So I think it's about using email, not to use the recommendation is not to use email as subscriber key. That's essentially what we should do. But then the absence of email, then what should we use? Is that really the hub of the question?
Yes.
Where's your source of truth for the customer? Where does that exist? Does that exist in Marketing Cloud, or does it exist elsewhere in
No.
Salesforce or an external system?
Other application.
Okay, so in the other application, is there a client ID or an account ID or something that could be used to identify that customer or that subscriber?
Yes, but
Yep.
the issue is that because it is connected to multiple application and multiple applications have their own IDs.
Yep. So once the contact comes into Marketing Cloud, there's many different types of ID that could be used to represent that customer. So is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So in Marketing Cloud, a strategy would be, it's a very good question. To answer that properly, we'll need to do a deep dive, but at a high level, it's going to be working out a strategy of unifying how we create a common identity for that customer. There's a few considerations around this. What you don't want to have happen is have multiple. You don't want to have in Marketing Cloud multiple subscriber keys for the same subscriber. So how do we consolidate down to one subscriber? So strategies for that will be to stage the data into Marketing Cloud, to create a point of view about what the subscriber key should be used, what the most important subscriber key should be used. But it really feels like it's a use case that we should give proper time to and explore a couple of strategies around. So I'm not sort of saying that we shouldn't talk about it now. I just feel as though we could deep dive for the next 3 hours and talk through different strategies for it. So can we take that as a question for follow-up, and we'll organise a meetup in the next week or so, next month or so, and really deep dive into that? Would that be okay? Because it's about either creating a unified customer for sending, but we've got to create a table that we update, a data extension we update, that has a common view. So there will be one subscriber ID that generally that we can use as a control, and then we need to update on that. Then we need to set rules in Marketing Cloud about how we do that, those updates. And that discussion is a big discussion. So it's a good discussion to have, but it just feels like a bigger discussion than a getting started discussion.
Yeah, thank you. And can I ask another question? Can you please tell us when we should use the data relationship? Because there is a feature called data relationship which uses the segmentation. So when is it recommended that we should use, or we should directly use like we do in query? We do join simple way, but there is also provision for data relationship. But how to identify we should go for that, which route?
Tim, did you want to do that one?
I'm not familiar with data relationships. Is that, and like when you're creating a data extension, how you're relating the subscriber to the subscriber key? Can you explain what the relationship in relation to a query?
Yes, I mean, what I've seen in the documentation is that it creates a relationship between two data extension.
Is that for a custom attribute?
I think without going, I'm sorry. No, without going into the contact builder, we can link two data extensions. That's what she's saying, if I'm not wrong.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
important. When you're creating a custom attribute in Data Designer and Contact Builder, you definitely want to check the relationship between those two data extensions. And especially if it's a contact key and you want to make sure that that carries through, you want to make sure that you want to be very clear on between those two different data extensions. You typically want to have in the contact key model, use that field relationship going in between each of those data extensions. So for instance, if your first data extension is a contact, based on contact data extension, the contact ID will be there. If your second one is like an account and you need to go into a third one, you might want to put that contact ID in the account data extension and have it link contact ID to contact ID if you need to go to that third layer. So yeah, that's definitely something you want to consider and make sure it's related to that source, the contact key, contact ID or lead ID, and make sure that carries through that relationship between each of those custom attributes.
Okay, thanks.
And another strategy there is also SQL, which you've talked about, and which is to do the joins and to project the data into a sendable data extension. So I picked up in the SQL there that Tim, you had a thing called the universal file. So I'm going to guess that universal file for you is like where you bring all the data together in Marketing Cloud. So
Correct.
It's like your source of truth inside Marketing Cloud. So it gets imported or updated, preferences get updated onto there. We've all got different strategies for that, but I saw that there. So I'm going to guess that when you're projecting data out, that you may do a join on a lookup table or another table to create those segmentations.
Correct. Yep,
Yep.
absolutely. I mean, that was a pretty basic example, but to your point exactly, Matt, in this model, this would be a non-CRM model. Say it would be an e-commerce brand where they might be using a third-party marketing database or a data lake to pull in that data, like orders from the order processing system, that they're pulling that in with a query to populate that universal data extension. So you can use that from a marketing standpoint. If you're using the Salesforce CRM, you probably don't need that universal data extension. Your source of truth will be the CRM environment, and those will be those synchronized data extensions that you don't need to create this universal data extension. You can just pull from contact, you can pull from lead, account, opportunity, campaign, all of those. So yeah, that's the wonderful thing about Marketing Cloud. So much flexibility, and it's so based in SQL, not complex SQL, but if you really understand SQL and the basic functionality, you can utilize both pushing and pulling data in both of those models very efficiently.
I think that's a really good takeaway, Tim. One of the things about Marketing Cloud is it's not prescriptive, and marketing's not prescriptive. So if you're used to the Salesforce Sales Cloud or any of the clouds, CRM clouds, they're very prescriptive data models. Whereas Marketing Cloud, it's actually the reverse. It is what it needs to be, and it does. It's actually got a SQL engine, as Tim's been showing. It's built into it. It's an MS SQL with some extra bells and whistles, but essentially it's just MS SQL. And you use that to drive the data through the platform. So it's very much about Marketing Cloud's about mapping what you need back to what you have. And you build a foundation with all these SQLs and these universal data extensions and these preferences, then you map those out into what they need to be for the marketing purposes. So yeah, I think that's a really great takeaway about it's not prescriptive, it is what it needs to be. And that's a two-edged sword. It can be a bit of fun, but sometimes it can be a challenge too, because there's so many nuances inside Marketing Cloud. Real-time versus just about real-time versus batch process can really get you caught, even with things like preferencing when you've got stuff coming from other systems. Anyway, enough said about that. Is there any other questions that we've got on the call? We've got 6 minutes. So any other questions there? We can always do questions again next week with Catherine, because we're going to redo this next week. So if we miss any, make sure we've got the questions in the chat so we can bring them up again and come and join us next week. Lakshmi, can you see any questions there?
I have 2 questions for myself, if that's okay.
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, actually, Tim, you have used a data extension called universal file, right? Where we have number of purchases as an attribute, right? So are we counting them somewhere, or how do you get the value into that attribute?
That's based on a query logic. You can just pull, again, that's pulling from your marketing data lake whenever a purchase happens, and you can just use query logic to enumerate and increase that naturally, depending on when you're doing the update to that universal data extension. I mean, I think that's a great topic to go over if it made sense. How to build those, how to change them and to modify them for those use cases.
Yeah. And my second question is, when we have data views available readily, why are we extracting the data view into another data extension and then querying it?
Great question. So data views are available for 6 months. So that's why it's always good whenever you're standing up a new instance. It's a relatively straightforward automation. You just populate your data. I mean, if you're starting off the new instance, you just start populating immediately. And those data views will work for any situation you have within the last 6 months. But if you need to know a 12-month clicker, you only get 6 months. So you create those automations to populate those important data views on a daily basis. So then after that 6-month period, you've got that history that you wouldn't normally, that just gets lost. I mean, you can contact Salesforce and say, can you give me but they'll be like,
yeah, I know this is an alternative, but I just wanted to know what is the actual reason.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, this data view related data extension will be a non-sendable, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's just as a database of, you're just going to look to capture that information that you're going to want to
history.
pull up. Correct.
Yeah.
History.
Yeah.
Yep. Great questions.
Yeah. Good one. Thanks, Tim.
But they're topics for discussion workshops: how to set up a master DE for all sending. And I think another one there is how to persist data views beyond 6 months, because that's a good conversation to have too. Data views contain event data. So it's all about events. Everything in a data view is event, whereas everything on the send log is about stuff that's happened or errors that they're occurring on the sends. The question that we had earlier regarding that we need to do a bit more of a deep dive on, who did that question come from? I missed, could you just put your hand up? That was about, we had a question earlier about how to get
unique ID.
accounts. Yeah,
it's Vidisha.
Sorry, that was Manisha.
Yeah.
Vidisha. Good. I'm just
can we use CDP here, like unification of data when we don't have some of the subscriber IDs, or I don't know how much cost.
CDP is an additional product, and I think that the first price range on that I've seen is $10,000 US a month. So it's sort of like a step up. Whilst it's a great product, there's things that we can do in the platform now that we don't need CDP for. And there's even, there's a whole conversation about getting ready for CDP and the best practice that CDP gives you with the data models and how to map towards that even without a CDP, because I think CDP is such a brilliant framework. But yeah, CDP in that discussion about how to set up a master DE is probably a very good one too. And the last question we had there was for Patricia, a question from, and that's about unifying the subscriber or creating an update. How to handle multiple sources where they've got different IDs, I think is the best way of wrapping that question up. And we'll set up a workshop for that and get that one thoroughly answered, because it's such a great question. It's a very pertinent question. We are on the top of the hour. I can see a couple more questions in there. Is it okay with everyone if we do these questions next week? We've certainly got a note of all those questions there. Feel free to go onto the chat for the group. There's an email. If you go back to Salesforce Marketing Cloud Dev Group, there's a contact the Dev Group leaders. Just put a question in there, and we'll add any questions, or go onto LinkedIn and reach out to any of us and ask a question directly, and we'll get them into the next chat. Thank you so much. But it's awesome just to see everyone on the call and just to learn a little bit more. It's what it's all about.
Sorry I ran late, and sorry, Catherine, I didn't mean to bump you there.
No problem. This was all very interesting. So I definitely learned some things, and I appreciate just interacting with others that are using Marketing Cloud. So that's what it's all about.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, bye.